So for our first one-dimensional array, we focused on the horizontal dimension, and we essentially recreated this first column of our two-dimensional array. We're going to now focus on a vertical array and do this first column of our two-dimensional array. So we're going to try to reproduce this 1, 6, 11, and 16, and then pull back either the first, second, third, or fourth element. Notice we're only going to have 4 rows here, so there are only going to be 4 elements or 4 individual things that are stored in this array. All right, so let's go over to our VBA code. Like usual with programming, we want to reuse as much as we can, so let's just copy our function. We'll create a new one. We're going to rename this instead of horizontal array. We'll call it our vertical array. First, let's change our output. Right, we have to match that final output with that name of the function at the beginning. Our input, we shouldn't really be asking for the column number anymore. Let's ask for the row number this time. Since it's a vertical, it's all in one column, so we got to ask which row do we want back. So we'll now make this the row number. The number array. So now we're going to go in and make our changes to flip this from being horizontally oriented to vertically oriented. So before we had 1 row and 5 columns, now we're going to flip that. We want 4 rows all in the 1 column. So 1, 2, 3, 4, all stacked vertically. We're still going to use loop number the same way, but once we get to our for loop here, we're not going to loop over it 5 times because there aren't going to be 5 rows to loop over. Instead, we need 4 rows. All right, so we've made a couple of adaptations there. Now let's look at the number array. Well, there we're doing 1 comma loop number. Right? Let's see what happens when we try this. So let's actually flip over, and let's go ahead and use our vertical array. And let's just ask for that second position. We get an error. First, we're getting a variable not defined error. So let's look into what that's all about. So that variable not defined, well, column number is not in our code. So this is an important thing to remember. Whenever you copy code, you have to make sure you change all the variable names. I changed row number up here, but not down here. So the thing is not going to compile. So that was our first error. Let's go back and see if we run into any other errors. Now we've got a value error. All right? Somewhere in our code, we're not getting the right value back out. And that's because we're trying to access number array 1 comma 4, right? Loop number 4, when that really doesn't exist. So let's actually use our immediate window. Let's clear it out. So we're going to clear out our full immediate window, and we're going to try to get an idea of where the mistake is happening. So one more time, let's come back, hit enter, and now we look at our immediate window, and we see that the number 1 printed out. So what that means is that the first time through this loop, right, loop number equals 1 the first time, number array is 1 comma 1, right? That exists. It's the first row, first column of our number array. And we can set that equal to 1, no problem. We could then print that out. We print out loop number 1 comma, number array 1 comma loop number. It still works. Now what happens when we go to loop number 2? At that point, we try to access the first row, second column of data. But if you recall up here, number array has 4 rows and only 1 column. So now we're asking it to go outside of its scope. Basically, you're asking it to go to almost the next locker over. You're no longer in this variable anymore. You're trying to go somewhere else, and that's where the value error is coming from. So the adaptation we need to make is to flip these. We need to do loop number, comma 1, rather than 1 comma loop number. So let's make that adjustment here across all 3 of our uses of number array. So we've got that switch, so now we're referencing the row number first rather than the column. Let's clear our immediate window out and go test our function one more time. Now the function's working. Let's see what happened in our code. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 printed out. All right, so we probably need to stop and think about why do we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 all the way up there? Well, the reason is that we're actually running both of these pieces of code. So this is where you got to be careful with your immediate window. So I'm going to come up here to our horizontal array. Let's comment that one out, and let's try one more time just so we can make sure we get a clear picture coming out of the immediate window. So we hit F2, enter, back over. Now we see what we expected. 1, 2, 3, 4. We went through the loop 4 times, and we populated the number array. All right, the last thing we need to do here is test it. So we see if we put the number 2 in, we get the value of 2. But that's not exactly what we were shooting for. We were trying to recreate this first column where we have 1, then 6, then 11, then 16. So the challenge now is going to be to figure out, can we write a formula that returns these 4 values in order? Basically, what's the pattern here? Well, the pattern appears to be you start with 1, and each time through the loop, add 5. So let's see if we can get that to work. So each time through the loop, we're going to add 5. So we're going to take whatever the loop number is and multiply it by 5. All right? So that first time, we're going to start with that 1. So we're going to do 1 plus loop number times 5. So let's see if that gives it to us. So if we run that for that second position, we get 11. Right? We're not quite right. We want a 6 there. Right? We go 1, then 6, then 11, then 16. So we're off by 5. Let's make that adjustment. We can just do a loop number minus 1 because we were off by a factor of 5. So we just need to not basically add in that 5 that first time. So the first time through, we have a 1. Right? The first time through, loop number equals 1. So we're going to have 1 plus loop number minus 1. So 1 minus 1 is 0. So we don't add anything. We get a 1. Second time through, 1 plus, well, the loop number is 2 minus 1. All right, so we're going to have 1 times 5. So 1 plus 5 is 6. And so on. Next time through, you're going to have 1 plus 2 times 5 is 11. And then finally, 1 plus 3 times 5 gives us 16. So this should work for us now. Let's double check. We're getting the right number there. If we want to actually use the function in an entire column, we can reuse vertical array, get the first position, and then all the way down to the second, third, and fourth positions. So now we see we're getting the same thing back that we started with and that we expected to get.